She came home from her first date at 9:45 in the evening. She called her best friend. They talked for like 15 minutes, said goodnight, and hung up. Exactly half an hour later, she didn't get a phone call. Instead, her smart home security app sent an emergency alert to her phone. Someone was cutting the main power grid outside. She grabbed her keys, ran out to her car in the driveway, and that was it. Nobody ever saw her again. 3 hours later, her car was spotted miles away, abandoned on the shoulder of a lonely mountain pass. Keys still in the ignition, the driver's side window completely smashed, but no blood, no purse, no Claire. But here's the crazy part. The guy who cut those power lines wasn't a random prowler. It was her former survival instructor, a guy named Mark. His name was already flagged in a protective order she had filed a week prior, and his wife's chat logs were already sitting in a police database. Today, both of them are locked up doing 30 years. But Claire's body? It's still never been found. This is her true story, from the isolated mountain town of Silver Creek. Claire Bennett grew up in Silver Creek, a chilly, heavily forested town full of winding dirt roads and thick timber. It was the kind of place where people went to get away from the world, not to get noticed. Claire was 20, sharp, and hyper-focused. She was working as a late-night dispatcher for a private security firm and taking online classes in criminal justice. She paid her own rent for a small cabin she shared with her childhood friend, Chloe. Chloe knew everything about her. They were the type of friends who texted each other constantly just to feel safe. Then came the spring of 2024. Claire took a wilderness tracking course, and her instructor was Mark, a 37-year-old local guide married to a wealthy real estate developer named Victoria with 3 kids and a perfect reputation. Mark became obsessed. He started showing up at her dispatch office at 11 p.m. with coffee, claiming he was just checking on the building. Within a month, it turned into a toxic, high-stakes affair. Mark was reckless, but Claire tried to cut all ties when she realized how unstable he was. In October, Claire posted a cryptic quote on her private blog. "The dangerous ones don't look like monsters. They look like the guys who teach you how to survive." She wrote it out of fear, completely unaware of how literal those words would become. When his wife, Victoria, found out, she went full psycho. She took Mark's phone, read all his messages, and forced him to hand over the master keys to all the rental properties she owned in the mountains. She kept a constant eye on him, making him text her his location every hour. But Victoria's real target was Claire. She showed up at Claire's cabin while Chloe was out. A neighbor walking his dog saw Victoria standing on the porch, yelling through the door. Later that night, Victoria texted Claire directly from her own phone. Court records revealed the text message. "You think you can hide from me? I know exactly where you live and where you work. This is your last warning before I handle this myself." Victoria then forced Mark to call Claire while she listened in to end it, calling her a liability. Claire blocked his number the next morning and went straight to the police station to file a harassment report. But since no physical threats were made, the local cops could only file the paperwork. On November 12th, Claire finally tried to move on. She went on a date with a guy from her forensics class named Daniel. A waitress at the local diner later testified that they seemed happy, laughing, and having a completely normal night. Daniel dropped her off at 9:45 p.m. Claire went inside, called Chloe, told her the date went great, and said she was finally feeling safe. They hung up at 10 p.m. At 10:30 p.m., the power went black. Mark didn't use a payphone. He used a tactical signal jammer he bought off the dark web at 8 p.m. that exact night. A digital receipt found on his laptop showed he purchased the jammer and a heavy-duty set of industrial zip ties just 2.5 hours before Claire's grid went down. When the lights failed, Claire panicked, grabbed her car keys, and ran outside. A neighbor's standard driveway security camera captured a dark SUV blocking her driveway, turning its headlights off the moment Claire walked out. Claire backed out fast, hitting the SUV, and sped off into the mountain roads. Between 10:45 p.m. and 11:15 p.m., her phone didn't ping cell towers. It completely dropped off the network because of the jammer. However, standard highway traffic cameras caught her car speeding at 90 miles per hour toward the old logging trails, closely followed by Mark's dark SUV. At 11:30 p.m., the SUV forced her off the road. When cops found the car at 2:30 a.m., the driver's side window was smashed. No Claire, no blood, just her house keys left on the passenger seat. The standard digital forensics blew the case wide open. Mark and Victoria's regular phone GPS data showed they had synchronized their locations that night. They weren't at home. Their phones placed them right on that logging trail at 11:35 p.m., exactly 5 minutes after Claire's car stopped. When cops raided Mark's property 2 days later, a routine search of his workshop revealed a fresh patch of poured resin, a boat hull that smelled heavily of bleach, and a burn barrel in the backyard. A local hardware store employee testified that Victoria had walked into the store the morning after the disappearance and bought 3 gallons of industrial acetone and several cleaning rags, paying with her credit card. They were arrested in early 2025. The murder charges didn't stick because the deep wilderness terrain made recovering a body impossible, and the vehicle scene didn't leave enough DNA forensics. But the kidnapping, conspiracy, and stalking charges based on the texts, GPS, and store records were ironclad. In 2028, Victoria got 30 years for plotting the ambush. In 2029, Mark was handed 30 years for execution and kidnapping. He's out in 2059. She's out in 2058. After the trial, Chloe stood in the rain outside the court. She said the sentences didn't bring her peace. She brought up how Victoria looked at her during the closing arguments, gave a tiny victorious nod, and whispered 2 words across the room: "Good luck." Chloe knew right then they would never say where Claire was taken. Claire Bennett was 20. She was smart, she knew the laws of survival, and she did everything right to protect herself, but the system failed her. What's the one detail that chills you the most? The dark web tech receipt at 8 p.m., the hardware store purchase the next morning, or that final whisper in the courtroom? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more deep, dark, uncompromised investigations. Some secrets stay buried, but we never stop digging.